first of the demonetization debates on Bloomberg Quint. As we close in on the first anniversary of demonetization, or the scrapping of 86% of Indian currency a year ago, the key question is, was it all worth it? Today we will look at one of the key promises of demonetization: rooting out corruption, exposing and eradicating black money. With the Reserve Bank revealing that 99% of the expunged money came back into the system, many asked, what was the point? The government's counter, of course, has been that money back in the system doesn't mean that those who had untaxed wealth would get away. So are we well on track to rooting out black money? After a year, should we have seen more concrete action on black money? And have the routes to generate black money been effectively closed? To talk on these issues, I'm joined this evening by TP Oswal. He's managing partner at TP Oswal and Associates. I'm also speaking with Professor Arun Kumar. He's chairperson at Malcolm Adishishai and professor at Institute of Social Sciences. But I also want to introduce him as one of the foremost experts of black money in India. Of course, Yogendra Yadav, president of Swaraj India, is also joining us in on this debate. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for speaking with us this evening. Mr. Yadav, I'll start with you. A year on, if you keep the politics out of it, the negativity out of it, and look at it very clearly, let's pick up the first big promise. Hasn't it become tougher to at least generate black money? And is the crackdown really not showing some results?
I'm afraid not. I must say that the day this was announced, we took a view that, okay, the government knows much more than we do. They have confidential information on what's happening. And we should be more charitable. We should give the government time. We should give the government some leeway on this question. And we took some of its promises very seriously. The Prime Minister said rooting out black money, catching fake currency, and of course other benefits that would follow. Now the information is quite clear. The picture that was given out to us on day one was short-term pains, long-term gains. What is clear to us now after 1 year is that yes, there were some only short-term gains, and those were short-term political gains for the ruling party, and long-term pain for the economy. That's what the picture we have. I wouldn't get into the technicalities of black money because we have Professor Arun Kumar, who clearly knows more about it than anyone in the country. But my broad picture is this, that on black money, the government's position kept changing every week or so. The initial claim was that there would be no deposit because people would be so afraid of keeping the black money that much of that would be thrown in river. Remember all those grand things that the Prime Minister said? Remember what the Attorney General said to the Supreme Court of India? Something like 3.5 lakh crore rupees of cash will never turn up in the banks. It does turn up. Then the narrative changes. They say, oh, because it has turned up, it shows our success. I mean, what kind of weird logic is it? And at the end of the day, is it easier to deal with black money? Is it more difficult? Please go and find out. And the simple test should be, was it difficult for those who were sitting on black money on 8th of November last year to get it converted into white? The simple answer, as per RBI report, is yes, it was easy. All of them managed to get it. So I'm afraid at the end of the day, you do not see any serious dent on black money. The fake currency thing has turned out to be fake itself, because not even 1% of the expected fake currency was actually caught. So at the end of it, we have a program which was the policy which is where the economics is disastrous, okay, where management part of it was deplorable. It's only the politics of it which was brilliant, which is paid in UP, but then there's a limit to all these things.
No, okay, so I just want to come to what the government has said it's doing over the last a few months. And before I come to you, Professor Arun Kumar, I just want to ask TP Oswal about this, because there has been a huge crackdown on shell companies. Companies have been, debarred, directors have been debarred. They found 17,000 crore rupees that was deposited and withdrawn after demonetization. They found one firm with over 2,000 accounts. They found one negative opening balance, which then withdrew 2,400 crores or more than that after demonetization. So all of this has been identified. And it happened because the money came back in the system.
Correct. Absolutely correct. It is not possible to do anything overnight. 1 year is not good enough term to say that yes, we have got all the things which are required to be got out of the benefit out of the scheme. The scheme was in force. We are a democratic country. We have huge bureaucracy which also is responsible for delaying the benefit of this whole scheme. And therefore, if the scheme has, now this is converted, the monies have been deposited by various people into the bank account. Now we have given a concession to the small deposit holders, which is actually the major reason why 100% of the money got converted in. The biggest blunder which was committed by the government was giving 50 days time. If the government would have created little stock of money and kept only 7 days open window and asked people to deposit money into the bank and continue to carry on your banking transactions through the check or any other mode other than cash, possibly this would have given a better result. But nevertheless, this is a hindsight. That is not now we are required to see. We have to see whether this is really resulted into a benefit. In my opinion, it will result into a benefit. It is not the case that just somebody says that monies have come back and therefore the promises government has made, it is only for the political gain. Political gain might be there. If the political gain would have been there, we will see whether what happens in Gujarat and Himachal. Is it also because of this black money? The result will tell. Therefore, it is not worth debating what is political out of this. After 18th of December, possibly 18th of November, possibly we'll see after the result is declared whether it was a political or not.
No, so
political could have been only.
We're not actually specifically having a political debate today. We're talking about if the promise was black money will be exposed, those who have black money will be caught. That's why you must suffer hardship for the greater good. Have we seen that greater good? Is the key question. And Professor Arun Kumar, I want to come to you on your comment before I go back to Mr. Yogendra Yadav. The question is that if from within the system you can identify on the basis of, because now authorities are checking tax returns, they're checking those who didn't file returns earlier or those who have a mismatch in their data. Could all of this have been done without demonetization? Because if it's that same set of officers or that department who has to weed out the sources of black money, did you need demonetization?
Yeah. So, let us analyze the problem carefully. The black economy consists of two parts: the black income that you generate every year and the black wealth that you've accumulated over the last 40 to 50 years. Now, the black wealth that you accumulate in different forms, and cash is only less than 1% of that. So my own estimate is that of the black wealth of 300 to 400 lakh crores, the black cash was 3 to 4 lakh crores, and the black income generation was about 93 lakh crores last year. So in other words, if you demonetize currency and you remove 3 to 4 lakh crore of black cash, you would have affected only less than 1% of the black wealth. And as far as black income generation is concerned, that's a process. So if you're a trader, you're a businessman, you're doing under-invoicing and over-invoicing, you're a doctor who sees 50 patients but only declares 20 patients every day. So all these processes continue. So in other words, black income generation is not affected, and black wealth, if it is at all affected, is affected to the extent of maybe at most 1%. Now 99% of the currency has come back. That means you have not even affected black wealth to the extent of 1%. But the government then turns around and says that, okay, now the money has come into the banks, so now we'll be able to investigate and catch people who cannot explain the source of their income. But the point is that the government does not have the machinery to audit such a large number of people. They have issued 18 lakh notices, and in the usual way, we are only able to audit about 5 lakh people every year. Less than 1% of those who file returns are audited. So in other words, the capacity doesn't exist to audit such a large number of people and find out. Even then, even if suppose you say that they have deposited money, you have to show that it's black. It could be white because large number of businesses keep cash in hand. And cash in hand is legitimate. To give an example, you take say a petrol pump which collects 20 lakhs of rupees every day. So over 50 days, it would have deposited 10 crores of rupees. So anybody depositing 5 crores, 10 crores, 15 crores could be just cash in hand. So we have to go back into the sources. The government then says that we have caught hold of shell companies, we have done Benami transactions, we have done raids, but these have nothing to do with demonetization. They could be done independent of demonetization. Everybody has known that shell companies exist in India, that shell companies are registered. If they had not filed returns for 3 years, which is the criteria that they're using, that could have been done independent of demonetization. So in other words, my argument is that the government made the basic mistake of believing that black is cash. Black is not necessarily cash. It can be transacted in a wide variety of ways. I can allot to you undervalued property. I can give you undervalued shares. I can transact in gold. I can transact through hawala, etc., etc.
Sure.
So in other words, the government made a basic mistake that black is cash, and if we squeeze out cash, black economy will be squeezed out. That has not come about. Second is the government thinks that demonetization is a one-shot solution to the black economy problem. And we know it's a process of black income generation.
So, no, to be fair, the government has been saying it is a series of processes. There will be a Benami law as well, etc., etc. And as far as and Yogendra Yadav ji, you wanted to come in on it.
But that's independent of demonetization.
Sure.
You can do it independent of you can do all that independent of demonetization. And demonetization has hurt the unorganized sector dramatically. Yes. And as the reports have come from that period, Punjab, Haryana, Delhi Chamber of Commerce and Industry, All India Manufacturers Association, State Bank of India survey, other private survey, they show that the unorganized sector was hit between 60 to 80%. So your rate of growth during that period became negative. It was no more a question
Absolutely, but since we are focusing this specific conversation to the scope of what happened to the black money, I just want to come to one bit before you give your response, Mr. Yadav, that on buying jewelry, though the government went back on it for a bit, you needed to declare your PAN over a certain amount. The amount of cash you could keep with you has been restricted, which has led to far-reaching changes in how at least some parts of the real estate sector work. Are these enough as examples of demonetization working to some extent? For example, more and more people are using digital payments than before.
What's happening is that we are just doing such fudging of logic. There's an elementary logic. I mean, let's go back to elementary class 5, class 10 logic. We are discussing demonetization and its impact on black economy. Let's not bring, as you correctly said, let's not bring in everything else. If the government wanted to catch these shell companies, it could have been done 5 years ago, could have been done 2 years ago, can be done today, can be done tomorrow. What does it have to do with demonetization? If you wanted to say, don't use cash for more than 50,000 rupees of purchase, you could have done it on 8th November, you could do it on 8th of May, you could do it on any day. So let's not confuse issues. You see, the real problem today, Tamanna, is that having done something which is unjustifiable, the Prime Minister having made big promises and they know nothing has come out of it. The Prime Minister said, 50 din, sirf 50 din mangta hu, uske baad lamp post se latka dena, whatever he said. The fact is that nothing of that sort has come. Now we are trying to search for benefits of something we know has failed. And this is why all kinds of these things, slips are being passed on to you and me. Why don't you consider this? Why don't you consider this? Maybe this could have worked. I mean, look, remember, there's something called unintended consequence. Any disastrous thing in this world has some minor beneficial consequences. If a city in India were to be marooned tomorrow, it would have some minor positive consequences that would come out later. These are unintended consequences. Let us not judge demonetization by some unintended small consequences it may have. The only way to judge demonetization is first of all to judge it by the promises that were made by none less than the Prime Minister of this country. When Mr. Oswal says, he makes some sensible points, which is that you can't expect overnight changes. He's correct to say it's democracy, things will take time, etc. But when he says, don't judge it by these pronouncements, etc., why not? The Prime Minister of this country said this to the entire country. The Attorney General said it to the Supreme Court. I'm not picking some random statements made by some BJP karyakarta in some small town. It must be judged by those claims. What was the initial claim? The initial claim was, and it was said on the floor of the Supreme Court of this country, that we expect that nothing less than about 3.5 lakh crore rupees, 3.5 trillion rupee will not turn up in the banks because we have squeezed black money. what happened? We know the results.
Yeah.
Why should we not discuss it? Why should we try to now look for pretense and justifications? What is the data on fake currency? Last year, when there was no demonetization, fake currency to the extent of 28 crores was caught. This year, after so much halla-gulla, 41 crore has been caught. What is the difference here? So these things have to be taken into account, and I submit that what we are dealing with is a disaster. We can have a discussion, we can have a meaningful discussion on whether this was the most disastrous policy of the last 50 years, or can other policy decision compete for that?
Okay. And,
Tamanna, I do not mind the government. I mean, I think let's just one more point I want to make, which is that, look, governments can make mistake. Not every prime minister is an economist. But the important thing for my political leader is to know what they do not know. This prime minister, this government doesn't even seem to know what they don't know. They don't care to consult anyone. Clearly, the previous Reserve Bank governor was not consulted. Clearly, the economic advisor to this government was not consulted. They don't consult a serious economist. And they are not willing to admit their mistake.
Okay, I want to come to the point you made, and I think Mr. Oswal should have an opportunity to counter. And that point, Mr. Oswal, was why should 1 year not be enough of a time frame to judge if what was promised has been delivered upon? Because it was a measure which was supposed to cleanse the system.
The Prime Minister asked for 50 days.
Okay. Mr. Oswal.
You see, the question is, once the disclosure is required to be made by the taxpayers, they file the return of income. After the filing of return of income, the normal process of scrutiny is 2 years' time, and normally the taxpayer is expected to explain everything. So even shell company actions, company law actions, Benami actions and income tax action, everything is going simultaneously, and government machinery is not keeping quiet. In my opinion, this is likely to result, no doubt that there will be some trouble to the taxpayers, because our bureaucracy is known for creating one, but at the same time it is going to result into some action, and ultimately you will find that the people who have deposited the monies, they will come on surface, and that amount will be detected, amount will be caught, amount will be taxed, penalties will be taxed, and even prosecutions will be launched. So therefore, and this cleansing of the system is a process which cannot be done overnight. In my opinion, therefore, even if the Solicitor General has made a statement or Attorney General has made a statement before the Supreme Court, he said this was his estimate. Ultimately, estimate is estimate. You cannot just hold somebody on a gunpoint and saying that you made a statement before the Supreme Court, you are found to be wrong. You can see if this amount has not been collected by way of a conversion of the deposit of money or non-deposit of money, the tax will be collected on that money which has been deposited into the bank account. And therefore, now people have innovative techniques of converting the money. They all use these techniques. And that was my point, is that giving 50 days time was the biggest mistake.
No, but it was perhaps the only way to let a lot of people who were in the informal sector survive through that period. If you see the humanitarian side of it as well,
no.
Important.
You could have.
Not everyone had a credit card and
you see, the question is, if you should have first of all inculcated that habit. For example, point of sale, the credit card system, which was, you should have made it compulsory for the various vendors, various type of vendors, including taxi drivers, which you did not do that. And all of a sudden you impose the scheme, and therefore you felt that it will come into it will resolve the problem, which is not going to happen.
Okay.
So therefore, people, you have given 15 days time, ask people to open a bank account, deposit the money, and do the transaction with a check. Who prevents you from doing the transaction with a check?
Okay, Yogendra
so then
Yadav
automatically thereafter, if you would have introduced GST, possibly it would have.
Okay, Yogendra Yadav wants to come in. Yes.
I find it an astonishing defense. Oswal Saab, I'm not holding a gun. I'm actually only holding a finger. And the finger I'm holding for a very simple reason. That the Attorney General of this country goes to the Supreme Court.
Sir.
The court says, why have you done this? He says, sir, something very major is going to happen. 3.5 lakh crore rupees of black money will remain out, shall never come to the banks. So Now we know, and the Prime Minister of this country says, give me 50 days. I did not say I will judge you in 50 days. He says, give me 50 days, I'll show you results. Am I not entitled to checking it? Am I not entitled to saying that, okay, I'm not saying everything is a disaster. All I'm saying is, okay, then we are entitled to concluding that what they thought at that point failed. Okay, now you want to go to a different justifications, let's do that. Let's go to 17th justification, let's go to 24th justification. But let us do so by admitting that the first justification failed. Put a cross mark, move to number 2. I'll be happy to discuss number 2, which is fake currency. That also failed. Let's put a cross mark. Let's move to number 3, cashless economy. Let's do it one by one. All I want is, I want elementary school logic to be followed in this conversation, which I think is probably not happening.
Okay, Professor Arun Kumar wants to come in, and even as you make your point, may I just pitch this question, which is a little forward-looking. Has at least the ease of generating black money been hampered?
Yeah. Okay. So, digitization is a separate issue. It was already happening. Yeah. People are moving towards a less cash economy automatically. The rate of growth of electronic means, etc., was rising. So in other words, digitization needs full preparation. You require financial literacy, you require point of sale machines, you require cyber security, you require regulation of the banks and the various payment mechanisms, etc. So in other words, this will not happen automatically. This requires preparation. Just like demonetization required preparation, this also required preparation. And that's why what you saw was an initial huge spurt in the month of November and December in the use of the electronic mechanisms, and then there was a sharp decline. Then again there was a spurt in March, and then again a decline and a very gradual rise since then. So in other words, on a small base, what you've had is a small rise because the preparation was not there. And as the money has come back into the system, and we know that more than 90% of the currency is back, so people have gone back to using cash and away from that because they're not comfortable with it. It takes time, and even in advanced countries like Japan, there's a cash to GDP ratio of 18%. So it doesn't automatically follow that if you have less cash, then people will automatically just not use it for generating black income. In contrast, in Nigeria, where there's massive corruption, the cash to GDP ratio is only 1.4%. So removing cash from the system does not mean that automatically corruption will go away, because there are a large number of mechanisms by which you can transfer money for corruption purposes. So in other words, if you are looking forward, then the process by which black income is generated, that needs to be curbed, because as long as the process of black income generation continues, black wealth will be created. So in other words, the mistake that was made was that to think that there's some one-shot solution which will solve the problem. And then we thought that we could have, say, Benami property bill, we could do the gold monetization, we could do income declaration scheme, etc. But none of these have delivered results because it's a political process. The political process needs to be cleansed, and that requires movements. So without movements, a long-term process of black income generation and its tackling will not be possible.
Okay, I want to come to TP Oswal with another point which was spoken about a lot in the context of black money, which was that the mindset of the nation has changed. This is one of the many arguments given to, sort of support the demonetization move, that now people know that if they use black money, they are likely to be caught. Morally, we have changed. Would you agree with that, TP Oswal?
No, I don't think we have changed morally also and legally also. That as the other speaker was saying, that the transactions continues to be on the same basis as this is going on in the past, and even we have seen the demonetization as well as GST. Both, despite the fact that we have a GST, we believe that both the ends of the transaction will be subject to GST. It will be cross verification and cross tallying, and therefore everything should be through the checks and mechanisms which are reportable. But this is not happening. There is a parallel economy going on, and that parallel economy is going on in the same manner in which it was going on in the earlier period. There are major difficulties. People are not comfortable dealing with the GST, and therefore the trade is continuing on the same basis. So therefore, unless you take parallel steps of stopping all the mechanism of converting or dealing within cash, the demonetization is bound to have bad impact. So therefore, that is what I said it earlier, that government has taken some steps, but they were lacking behind in some steps. But over a period of time, this will happen. As somebody has said that only 1% of the cash was, the black money was in the cash. And therefore, if it takes 3 or 4 years further, it doesn't make any difference, because 99% of the black assets are already existed in other form of assets. So why should you be very worried and bothered about that 1% of the asset and they're squeezed immediately? Over a period of time, everybody will be caught. And therefore, my opinion is, have some patience. Government steps taken are absolutely in the right direction. Along with the demonetization, they should have changed the culture of revenue, the bureaucracy. Private sector should have been involved, and there should have been a sweeping changes which is beyond the control of the government, and because of that it has failed.
Okay, I don't know if anyone would call demonetization anything but sweeping changes, but yes, I get your point, Mr. Oswal, that, change the system as a whole. Professor Arun Kumar wants to come in with a quick comment. Yes, sir.
Yeah. I'd like to point out that we've had about 40 committees and commissions that have gone into various aspects of black economy since 1948, and they made thousands of suggestions, and hundreds of them have been implemented from time to time. So we know that in 1971, the highest marginal tax rate used to be 97.5%, and the black economy then was only 7%, whereas today the tax rates are now to 30%. The black economy has gone up. We have done voluntary disclosure schemes, we have done bearer bond schemes, we have done a large number of things, but none of them have actually helped in controlling the black economy, because ultimately it's a process, and especially a political process, and that's why I had argued that movements are needed, not these technical steps. These technical steps based like demonetization on the idea that black means cash was based on an erroneous idea. Black does not just mean cash, it is a lot of other things also. So we need to be very careful in our policy prescriptions.
I'm going to ask you one last question, Yogendra Yadav, and it's a slightly political one. You said that demonetization yielded political results, and if you look at the reason behind that, was a lot of people were happy to think that those who had unaccounted wealth were going through trouble, never mind if they had to face equal or more trouble. Can you deny that that feeling persists, and any party or government who is seen to at least attempting to fight such forces will always have support? And then we can keep arguing about whether it worked or it didn't.
Why should I deny that? Of course, the simple fact is that there is huge black money, that ordinary people, the poor, feel deprived. There is a sense of class resentment. There is a deep anger among ordinary people about black money. And therefore, when they thought the Prime Minister of this country was doing something about it, they all plunged for it, and they said, all right, I'm willing to wait for 8 hours in the queue, even if I don't get something at the end of it. Modi ji ठीक कर रहे हैं, कुछ करेंगे, बड़े लोगों को पकड़ेंगे, बड़े चोरों को पकड़ेंगे. Of course there is that feeling, but now after 1 year, when they know that nothing of that sort is happening, they do not look at these Reserve Bank of India statistics, but they look around and see nothing has happened to these big black money people, nothing has happened to that corruption, then the same hope can turn into anger. And that is what this government needs to be careful about. Any government should be careful about. Right. Invoking black money and promising action was indeed a very big thing, but then not delivering on that is one of the biggest crimes.
All right, I will end at that point. Thank you so much, Yogendra Yadav, Professor Arun Kumar and TP Oswal for joining us on what is the first of our demonetization debates. Today we spoke about where is the black money. Well, the government is trying to prove that the hunt is on. Those who may have flouted the rules have been identified. The question is, when will these results finally be seen?